Maple syrup. Hey, there we go.
Almost the same song each time now. Did you know that?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Well, I do only know like 5 or 6 chords. So that may be why it's always the same 5 or 6 chords.
Very close.
Same,
It
but you know,
totally
that's what pop music is made from, so it's all
Repetition,
good.
baby,
It really,
repetition.
really is. Well, welcome to the show. It's Maple Syrup time, and it's 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in our neck of the woods. Carol, are you still in New York area?
I'm actually in St. Louis, Missouri, so it's central time for me, so I'm an hour behind.
Oh, okay.
Which
Very
is good
cool.
because I'm an old lady and I go to bed very early.
That's very cool. St. Louis is one of my favorite places in the world.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, I mean, I like Geekway to the west. Have you ever been to that game convention?
Yeah, I love Geekway. I just got my tickets for this year.
Oh, cool. When's it running, actually? In like September or something?
October this year. They pushed it back.
All right. I still don't think I'm going to be traveling this year at all. But yeah, so a bunch of my friends live in St. Louis, so that's why St. Louis is a great place. They also have pretty good barbecue. I like barbecue, so I'm down for any time that I can go to St. Louis. I'm in. Erica, you got to come to Geekway sometime. It's a really good show.
I'm afraid. Okay, so I've only booked one thing this year that's not gathering, and that's in December because I figure by then enough things have run that people will figure out best practices.
Right. True. But you are going to Gathering?
I'm going to Gathering.
If everything opens up and all that, that's cool. Good.
We're all good because of the latest update was that with the ArriveCan app, right? If you have negative COVID test and you're telling the government that you're coming to the border like 3 days in advance both ways.
Right.
So if that all works out and you're Canadian and you're all vaccinated, you should have no quarantine. You should have no 3-day hotel stay.
Okay, that's cool.
That was the latest as of Monday.
Yeah, I mean, there was at one point, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, where Broadway tickets, if you had AstraZeneca, you actually couldn't go.
Oh my god!
Because AstraZeneca wasn't actually approved by the American FDA.
That is a factor.
But it was approved in Canada for a while.
Yeah.
And so I have AstraZeneca.
I actually do have to go to New York the first week of August, though, for work.
Work?
Yeah, I have to go. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. Basically, I'm going to New York State twice in August and then not moving again until December.
Why don't you just stay there in between?
No, I got to. Hey, no. First off, it's going to be my birthday. I want to be home.
True.
Second off, I get 2 weeks before I go back again.
True. Okay, cool. Well, welcome, Carol and Kai. There she is. Hello. Kai's back. Good to see you.
AstraZeneca was approved briefly and was totally fine in New York. So you can't prove unless you present your card.
We don't get cards. We get these paper receipts of each individual one.
Yeah.
I don't really.
I don't know.
That's just what we get.
I might be a teacher and laminate mine.
Yeah, but they're paper sheets. So, okay, I'll be fair. I have both of mine like in a sleeve, but they're full size paper.
Yeah, they're like 8.5 by 11s. They're
Anyway. You can totally laminate that.
I totally can.
I have a laminator. Yeah,
I mean, we're tabletop designers. Of course, we have laminators. Come on.
I mean, even worse,
laminators, paper cutters.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think a lot of the things we got came from teaching first and just happened to be handy for game design.
It's true.
Same. I have a pile in the corner that I'm looking at right now that is paper cutter, laminator, sheets, card sleeves, and like a bag of dice.
I am literally surrounded by all that stuff.
Exactly, me too. That's my basement.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Carol and Kai. It's very nice to have you here after last week's mishap that shall not be talked about. And it's good to finally have you here.
Weird day.
Oh, it's like Freaky Wednesday. Is it Weird Wednesday? There you go. It was Weird Wednesday. Yeah. Nobody's switched brains with each other though. That would have been weird.
That would just be
that would have been weird.
Bad family movie.
I may have temporarily switched brains with my cat, but then I switched back before I had to use the litter box. It's fine.
There you go. That's good. Everybody's good. It's all good.
I took a nap. It was great.
Excellent. So let's learn a little bit about our guests, shall we? Let's ask about their origin stories. We're going to start with Kai. Kai, how did you get into gaming? Why did you decide to design games, and what do you tell people that you do when they ask?
Well,
I know
I feel
lots of
like
questions.
my origin story is maybe a little bit weird. I grew up in a household with no media.
Like no TV kind of thing, or no TV, no radio, no nothing.
No, I mean, radio?
Uh.
Yeah, no, nothing. My parents were like extreme hippies, grew up in Northern California. They were part of the whole movement. So no movies, no TV, no radio, no nothing, no games, video games. Oh my gosh. Right. So for me, I remember saving up my ice cream money as a child.
Wow.
In order to give it to somebody at the local video store to rent Planet of the Apes DVDs. And then would play them in the VCR TV, which was not hooked up. I would like go in, I would plug it in. I'd figured out how to do it. And then I'd watch it on the lowest volume possible so that I could hear the garage door.
Oh my gosh, if it opened.
And then immediately shut everything off, pull it out, unplug it, so that it wasn't still warm.
Nice. You went like the full.
That's like some spy action.
I hope your parents are watching this now and they're like taking notes.
No, we've talked about this. Like, this has been like resolution, because what ended up happening was that I had very, very successful older siblings who didn't go into media or anything like that. And I, at like 15, was like, you know what? I'm going to go work at a video store. Like VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, all that. And then majored in media in college, then worked in LA for a few years. But something I really enjoyed was games, which we didn't have growing up. Even tabletop games, my mom doesn't know how to play chess. We didn't have tabletop games. And my brother was like the classic like 90s nerd, D&D, like all night play sessions with family and friends. I mean, like extended family, for like Risk or Samurai Swords before it got reskinned. And I thought that seemed really cool, but I was always the nerdy younger sister, so never got to play it. But I got into tabletop when I was working in television in Los Angeles. It was an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
It was social. It was fun. The people weren't like the people I was working with in television. And it was incredible, and I loved it. And it was something I'd always been interested in, but wasn't accessible because games aren't for girls, right?
I would disagree. I was like, looking at the guests and the hosts of this.
Well, okay,
I'm going to disagree with that.
Where I was like, yeah, like, I guess maybe not, but I'm really good at them, and I really like them, and I keep beating people, and they're fun, and so that inspired me in part to get into games. And so here I am now.
There you are now. And currently, are you still working you're working in games, correctly? Correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And you're teaching. And do you teach in the game studies area?
I teach game design for the younger group in NYU. Okay. Like their Game Center, they have a really great high school program that is like, you think you might be into games. Is game studies your thing? Let's test it out. Let's see, like, maybe it is, maybe it's not. How can you apply it to other things? So I teach game design in that section, and then I teach multiple games programming courses. In the fall, I'll be teaching Intro to Game Engines.
Fun. So you like totally rebelled against your parents.
I was going to say you binged it. Like it's like still,
they still don't get it.
Well, I mean they have no probably.
They were like no TV, no games, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I was like, I'm going to work in television and get a master or get like my degree in it, and then games. You know what? I'm going to get a master's in that one.
I want to take game courses someday. Like I actually don't. Okay, I work full time in games. I I've never taken a games course, and I feel so jealous of all these people who've taken these things. I'm like, my I don't know, whatever. I've got like my own wacky set of degrees, but I'm like, I never took a games course.
They didn't exist when we were
They
in
didn't
school.
exist, but I'm so tempted to know what the hell one is like now.
I mean,
I feel like Carol's a great person to talk about that.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I was working full-time in games, and then I went to get my game design MFA in my 30s. So like games didn't exist when I went to undergrad, 15 years ago, but now they do, and it was an opportunity for me to like just explore something that I already knew that I loved, but I knew I also needed more mentorship and structure and guidance to really tap into what I wanted to do with game design. And it did that for me. Like, it was an amazing 2 years. So not saying you should go to grad school for game design, but maybe like see if you can audit some classes and see if it's a thing that would be good for you.
My husband probably thinks I've collected enough degrees at this point, but
you've collected enough degrees. Not only your husband, I think that too.
But hey, I'm gonna collect more when I retire and get to go to school for free. That's my goal.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna go get a game degree when I retire.
That'd be the best. That'd be the most funny thing ever.
I'll be sitting there with like, yes, I've literally designed a room full of games by this point. I would love to see your class.
Yeah. I think, and it's funny because a lot of our friends are actually, the instructors in these programs and whatnot. I'm sure we could get a hold of the syllabus if you really wanted it.
Eric. I am very curious. Sorry, it's just one of those things where you're like, yeah, I want to know what that's like.
Yeah, I was gonna teach at Scott's lab this year, but I can't with my own teaching stuff, so it's hard. You have two different universities and colleges working together. It doesn't work out all the time. No, but I think there's a lot to be said about guiding people through the process of making games, and just having a little more like an academic bent to it, and even that idea of that it's a fine art, I think is a wonderful
absolutely. It's a form of communication in itself.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah. It's just because at one point it was very much just like, you just had to learn it all yourself. Like, that's just whatever it was, you had to just figure it out.
I mean, it wasn't even that long ago. That was like,
I know.
15 years ago, right? When we started 20 years ago.
I only started game design like just over 5 at this point. But it's just like, everything was just like, I guess I have to figure this out too.
Yep. And I mean, if you were a younger student, maybe there would have been more, you would have been more clued into like, they're just starting that video game design program or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Carol, tell us about your origin story in terms of relations to games. Did you grow up playing games? What was your favorite game when you grew up? And what made you want to get into designing games and all the stuff that you're doing now?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have basically the opposite story of Kai, where, I grew up surrounded by games and computers, and we had tons of board games. And I remember just playing like backgammon and cribbage with my mom all the time growing up. And, my dad had an Atari, and then my brother had Nintendo, and I had computer games galore. And I was just like constantly at play, I think, in my childhood. And, really it was my favorite hobby essentially as a kid, and still somehow it never really resonated that I could go into it as a career. And so when I went to undergrad, I went for like animation and web design and web development, which is stuff that I was dabbling in when I was in high school. And then it was right after college when I had a bunch of friends who were also really into games say like, hey, why don't we just explore game design as a hobby together and make a game together? And we did. And that was the first video game that I ever helped to create. And we released it in 2011. And then after that, we just kind of kept exploring it. And in 2013 was the first time I ever did a game jam. And that was when I realized that games could be such an expressive form of art, that like we made this game that was poetic and beautiful and interesting and not very good, as it turns out, but like it tapped into a part of my brain that I hadn't seen before with games, and made me realize like this is something that speaks to me and that I want to keep doing. And so after 2013 is basically when I started really making games something that was a part of me. And then like 2015, I, worked on my first card game, and 2016 is when I went like completely full-time in games as opposed to just part-time. And then 2017 is when I went to grad school.
So in the reverse order, there you go.
Yeah, I love that.
You're like the Benjamin Button of game design.
Kind of, yeah. And now I'm a full-time senior game designer at Exploding Kittens. So I am full-time tabletop game design right now.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
It is really, really fascinating. I think that when you talked about game jams, that the games that we make at game jams, they are not going to be great products. 99% of them turn into nothing beyond the game jam itself. But they're awesome. Yeah. They're just awesome in terms of, I made this thing in a 24-hour period, or we made this together as a team in 48 hours or whatever it is. And they're wonderful little like artifacts of creativity. And there's this discussion on the Maple Syrup Shop Talk page and a couple other pages where one of the people who helps with Festival in Denmark had this big kind of red thing that said, games are art. And a bunch of people, well, not a bunch of people, just one very specific person sort of said, no, they're not. And then everybody kind of rallied against him. It was fun to watch. And he kind of did it on purpose because he wanted to say,
is this someone we know who's antagonistic?
Well, I know that they're antagonistic. It's Sebastian from he's Delfino. Anyways, I don't know if he actually has a degree in fine arts, but his argument was that something like people don't have the literacy to talk about games as art. And then a bunch of people put their hands up and said, I actually have an MFA. I actually have, a PhD. And I actually have all these in like art and architecture and all these kind of things. And I'm pretty sure I can talk about a game as art. And, I don't have an MFA. I'm a psych prof, but I can still talk about games as art because I think there is something very, very specific about games that are artistic, although we tend to see on our end of things them as products, which is sort of this interesting part. But then you go into industrial design and stuff like that. You go, how is that not art when somebody can take, a chair and make it functional yet a thing of beauty? How is that not art?
Well, and I think there is a delineation between art and design, right? Like where design is for other people and art is for you in some ways, where like design is like, and I think games is a really interesting intersection of those things where you're designing for the player, but you're also designing, I mean, if you're designing the way that we often design, you're designing also to be expressive of your own interests and your own goals and your own experiences in many ways. And like to discredit the idea of games being art simply because they are also a product is just so absurd. As if we can't be critical and analyze
photo would negate that basically.
Diminishes art and the idea of art into something that's like, if it's not just selfish, then it's not like pure, which seems very bizarre to me, where I think there's something really beautiful about an art form that invites other people to be a part of it. And I think that that's what games does, is it says, I mean, it can be high art, it can be Ameritrash, like who cares? But you are designing something to make other people feel something or experience something.
Yes.
I think it's designed
that's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, designing around experience. Like that's and that's what else is art but experience.
And then a lot of people are like, oh, it's not art if you want to make money or are like expecting other people to feel a certain thing. And you're like, no, like
I don't think that's historically true at all.
Like, no.
That's a weird take. That's a really
weird take.
Just quickly, we have a question from Jim Baker. Jim asks, what are some of the popular board game jams in North America?
Ooh, that's a good one. I actually don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually approach every game jam as a board game jam if I'm feeling it. Like, so like the Global Game Jam, they actually do a lot of sites will actually just say like, hey, work on whatever you want to work on. I've worked on board games and card games at Global Game Jam. I've also worked on experimental hardware stuff with like capacitive, like I turned pairs into a controller.
Yeah.
So like you can do anything you want at a game jam. The entire point is to experiment. If you're looking for folks though, like to collaborate with specifically on board games, that's a really good question. I think the best analog for that is really board game contests that are like, you know, specific around rapid board game design. I'm not really sure of too many specific board game jams because I just think of them as being like all inclusive.
Yeah, we can ask that question out on Twitter and stuff and see what people are saying. There is an RPG one coming up in Britain that's actually for newer, younger designers like 15 to 25 who've never really done RPG design before. That somebody who's in the mentorship program is running in the middle of July. So that's something. If you're into RPG design, go find my Twitter. I retweeted it this morning. And it's running on, you know, BST, but if you can deal with that time difference, it's a 5-hour time difference from us in the eastern part of the States and Canada. You're totally welcome to join. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there. You just got to kind of look for it and find it. But I think that'd be a really good repository somewhere is like having a list of all the game jams. There might actually be one. I've just never looked, Jim, because usually I'm running one at the school.
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, a lot of larger conventions will have somebody organizing it. But the funny thing is with game jams is they're not necessarily always directly connected to the actual event itself. It's more like somebody said, hey, I'm going to run a game jam, or like, hey, there's a prototyping room. We're going to do something in that, right? So I find a lot of it is discover as you go.
We typically run one every year at at Shucks. So Jay, Cormier, and myself will run a game jam of something. Last year, we actually did one on Discord that was all virtual escape rooms. So we made virtual escape rooms online with people. That was fun. And the year before that, we usually get sponsorship from like Panda or some other manufacturer to supply all the parts. So we just kind of throw people together in teams. Say, here's a bunch of parts. Here's some constraints for you. Go ahead and we'll see a game within a couple hours. We prompt them with all these types of things. Now is when you should be thinking about writing the rules down, or now is when you should be play testing and all this kind of stuff. And then eventually we kind of have like a showcase at the end where like all 12 teams come up and pitch their games. It's really fun. So you can do it within like a thing. You can do it over 24 hours, 48 hours. And then there's, like Carol said, there's longer contests, and BGG often has lots of those.
BGG threads are a great place if you're looking for contests. And it doesn't mean you have to be out there to win. I think that's a lot of people forget that part. It's just to have parameters to work in.
Yeah.
It's like having an assignment. And honestly, that's one of the best things you can do for yourself.
Constraints are everything.
I was going to say, I didn't want to interrupt. I was going to say, like, constraints are what made Carol and I's project.
Yeah.
Currently.
What were the constraints for Kroma? Was this for Kroma?
Yes. So for
the basic origins, like,
okay,
it evolved much more beyond it, but the inspiration, like.
Yeah, there was like a series of like 3 different projects that eventually led to Kroma, and each of those 3 different projects had very specific assignment constraints. So like one was like
time constraints.
Yeah, exactly, that too. But it was like one was, I think, utilize territory capture or something, and then one was work with somebody else's project to enhance that particular project. And then the next one that we gave ourselves was, in 2 weeks, make a color blending game. So those kinds of constraints can really make a huge difference. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, for anybody out there who's listening, who has ideas but doesn't know how to get them to the table, or just having trouble finishing something that is like playable, just give yourself some constraints. Whether it's a time deadline, whether it's I can only use 24 cards. That's actually our basic thing. Yeah. Is I've got 24 tiles or 24 cards. It's all I can do. What am I going to do with that? And it really leads to the idea of the MVP, the minimum viable prototype concept that I throw around a lot. That gets you right in there. Just really give yourself small constraints to get something done. A lot of people have this idea that it has to be big and voluminous and 6,000 cards and
perfect and finished and
no,
and there's
no,
the
no,
hex
no.
grid.
No, it does not have to be any of those things. It has to be on the table. Like, honestly, if I cannot play it, it's not a game. That is probably my definition of a game. Can I play it with you? Yes. Okay, then you've made a game. Can I not? Yeah, that's it. That's simple as it gets for me. So let's talk about your design philosophies, because I'm really stoked to hear from both of you, because you have such a wide breadth of experiences beyond just game design. So why don't we start this time? We'll start with Carol instead of Kai, and we'll move over to Kai as we get along. So design philosophy. You talked about a multidisciplinary design ethos. What does that mean to you, and what are you bringing to the table when you're saying, "Oh, I have a multidisciplinary design ethos"?
Yeah. So my background, like I mentioned, is in like a lot of different design areas. So like I started out in web and graphic design, and then shifted into animation, and then really did a lot of web development, and then found my way into experience design and game design and UX and things like that. And really, I mean, all of those things feed into my perspective as a designer, especially as a game designer, because all of those things factor into how I think about how the player is going to interact with my game. Like when I approach a project for the first time, like I really like to give myself a goal, like a constraint, like we were talking about. So like in a lot of cases, I'll think like, well, okay, start out, what medium do I want to make this in? Like, what do I want to do with any given project? What do I want to accomplish with any given project? And what do I want the player experience to be? And that'll help inform, should this be digital? Should this be tabletop? Or should this be somewhere in between? And so like, for example, for Kroma, it was, how can we create a tabletop game where we're, working with color specifically as a mechanic? Another project that I've done is, how can I turn a sofa into a game?
How can you?
You install pressure sensors under each of the cushions and hook up an Arduino underneath.
Your butt.
And then you use your butt as the input.
You could be illusioning. Yeah.
There you go. I love it.
All kinds of stuff.
So and then, for video games, it's a lot of times it's more artful, right? Where it's a singular experience, an individualized, like solo experience that I'm trying to capture emotion in. But yeah, it always boils down to like, what is the experience that I want the player to have, and what other constraints do I have? So like when I'm designing for mass, it's also thinking about components. What kinds of components do I have to limit myself to? What is the cost of goods going to look like at the end of this project? Things like that. That all informs my full like start to finish design process.
Very cool. And Kai, what about you? What informs your design?
Everything for me it boils down to two questions, which is, what does it mean for me to make a game that my parents would play? And then what does it mean to make something that two people can play together regardless of video game experience?
All right, cool. And so when I play a game that has designer Kai Karhu underneath that, what is like the indelible fingerprint that you think you personally leave on games? What do you think?
So for me, it means that you can learn it really quickly, regardless of how many board games or video games you have played, and you can play it equally with another person.
Very cool.
Who may have all the experience in the world.
Right. I see. And Carol, what about you? What's your fingerprint? What's the fingerprint you leave on games? That's the Mertzian fingerprint.
Yeah, I really like to say that I like to make games that help teach you about yourself and or the people that you're around. So like, in a tabletop space, that's encouraging conversation. It's encouraging an opportunity to connect with other people. in a video game space, a lot of times it's encouraging introspection and encouraging you to kind of like look at the world a little bit differently.
That's really interesting that you say that about video games. And I like that. We often talk about video games as being, a solo thing. And sometimes you play with, multiplayer dungeons and whatnot, but it's still, kind of by yourself. So I like that you're saying there's some introspection and there's definitely learning that can be done through a lot of these different medias in terms of like immersive storytelling and all the stuff that you get from making decisions as playing as another character. What would this character do versus what would I do, and all those types of things. Also, just so you know, Chris Anthony would really like to know more about the specifics of your sofa game.
How hard do you have to push your butt down?
I still say, like, IKEA, you're missing out.
It
If
could go
anybody
in with
here-
the Pride collection.
Yeah,
I
if
could
anybody
totally
here
be
has
driving.
works with
I could
IKEA.
totally be driving. Oh my god, that'd be awesome.
So the
Driving
game is
with your
called
butt.
Hell Couch. If you search the hashtag Hell Couch on Twitter, you'll see it was actually curated into Alt Control GDC at the Game Developers Conference in 2019. So there's a bunch of videos.
Nice.
There's a bunch of articles and stuff on it, so you can see more of it there. It's just basically like Simon, but with your butt.
Cool.
So,
Very cool.
and then there's a demon trapped in the sofa, and then when you're done, a fog machine blasts out a bunch of fog at your feet. Yes, I hacked a fog machine, and I'm very proud of that fact.
That's
I'm
awesome.
I'm still waiting for Carol to make a version that gives you bonus points for terrible farts, because that's my personal superpower.
So there is a methane sensor that you can purchase, and I have purchased, and I have maybe experimented with.
maybe there's no video evidence of this ever, so it's really funny.
There actually might be.
Hell Couch expansion
Yeah,
version of Hell Couch. I will win.
One of my favorite things is I love alternative controllers for things. So I worked for a long time developing alternative controllers for computers and wheelchairs and stuff like that in the disability population. So I love that you're doing things with like your butt, because that's what a lot of the people that I work with, that's what they can move. And I think that's amazing that there can be games that are specifically set up to use alternative parts of your body,
squeeze controls, something about like muscles. Yeah.
And there's tons of those things, and there's all these cool sensors that you can get. Like there's a bunch of stuff that a lot of it's made for like music controlling for some weird reason. There's a lot of MIDI controllers, and we can translate MIDI.
Methane sensor.
Especially
you
that.
Gotta love those musical farts.
Yeah, we can. And the thing is, like,
MIDI's
eggs. Yeah, it's 120 degrees of stuff. Yeah, and there you can do so much really cool stuff with that. So it's fascinating that you're all talking about this stuff. And Erica, I want to go to get a degree after this. I'm just thinking, what am I going to do on my sabbatical? Maybe I'll join you down in New York and we'll make some fart stuff. That'd be fun.
That is also my design philosophy.
What, more farts?
Make fart stuff.
Make fart stuff. That is 100% my design philosophy. Really quick, I do want to shout out my co-designer on Hell Couch, who is also our co-designer on Kroma. Francesca Carletto Leon was my kind of partner in crime on the Hell sofa. So that was entirely born out of NYU madness and resources and privilege, though, because we actually had a space to work on something so massive. But the alternative controller stuff is so unbelievably inspiring.
I love that. Like, this is where games and art intersect really well, right? Where it's like, this wouldn't be a marketable product, but it sure as heck is a game, and it's probably art to somebody. Mm-hmm. To me, it's art.
Let's be honest.
Who would think of it?
Everyone deserves entertainment, right? And this idea that it's limited to like accessibility of entertainment is kind of a ridiculous idea. But it very much is there, and people don't pay attention to it. And this is like a perfect segue into, well, then let's make all this entertainment accessible.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Kai.
That's a really difficult thing where people can say that, but there is this like knowledge privilege.
Oh, for sure. That's where hobby has its immediate slope of assume prior knowledge.
Yeah, so extreme prior knowledge, which is, so my thesis project was, once again, a game that inspires communication, and you can play it with multiple people with different general knowledge, but also something that my parents can play. My dad has, and I have a genetic disorder that makes it really hard to do stuff with our hands. And so I said, we're going to make a thing that you can play just with your feet. And it's very simple. It's up, down, left, right. It's 4 things. That's it. And you can play it with someone else where you're operating 2 sides of a bar, up, down, and then left, right. And that for me, those very basic controls and that very simplistic idea is what makes it something that's communal and simple.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. So let's move on to the NYU Game Centre. So we've actually had a couple guests come on who are either professors there, have gone there, have done their MFA there, but we've never actually talked about it. we all just talk about their games. Yeah. What's it like? Why would people want to go there? What do you learn there? What do you get in 2 years at NYU Game Centre?
I like to call it structured chaos.
Okay.
I went because I really, in St. Louis, was pretty desperate for mentorship and wisdom and guidance, where a lot of the people here don't have a historied experience in the industry. And so I went knowing that I wanted to really hone in and just focus on creativity for 2 solid years. And that's what it did. It gave structure, it gave guidelines, it gave constraints, and it really allowed me to kind of unlock my creative vision, so to speak. I did so much more in 2 years than I had in 5, simply because I had that structure. But it was also just kind of so open-ended. You could really do almost anything that you wanted, like a sofa. It was also a game. Kai, do you want to talk about?
Kai, what about you?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm a little distracted. My very temperamental cat in the last 10 minutes has just circled me like I'm prey.
Oh.
He's great. He's sensitive. Oh my gosh. What was the question?
Sorry.
He's very pointy and angry.
Oh.
He lived through trauma.
Oh, okay. Poor kitty.
I'm sorry.
No, the question is really just, what did the NYU Game Centre offer you? Why did you pick there to go? What did you get out of it, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, okay. I ended up going to the Game Centre because I was getting a different master's degree on the same floor.
Oh, you would be curious as you saw people kind of going by, sort of thing?
Well, there was a class called museum design. And that was something that was really interesting to me. And it was in the games department, which was on the same floor. So I just kept showing up. Even though
what the class was like, kind of thing?
No, because I couldn't sign up officially.
Okay.
So I kept showing up. Because I figured that if I kept attending class, they couldn't bar me from enrollment.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did. It did. And I designed a very successful game for that class, and it was great. And it made me think, what more can I do with a degree in this department? because this is what I'm really passionate about. So that's why I ended up there.
I love it. I love the randomness of it, but it's so perfect because you never know when you're going to find the thing that just, strikes you.
Totally.
Yeah. And I loved the department. The department felt like it embraced me for the first time, where I was like, I love games. Does games love me?
Aw.
And
I like that.
It did.
We had a really diverse cohort, historically diverse, which was really great. And I think probably the first time a lot of us had ever gotten to work in games primarily around such a diverse group of people. Like, we were a majority non-men in a cohort of 30 some. And it was such an amazing, just purely creative experience. And speaking of multidisciplinary design, it really leans into that. There's classes on alternative controller hardware and classes dedicated to tabletop design and dedicated to video game design, but then also to literally just the study of games. So thinking about the sociological implications of games and how we think about games as art and how we look at them from their historical context on culture and society dating back thousands of years to now. It's all that stuff helps really shape your perspective as a game designer, because you're thinking about games as something bigger than just this one little thing that you're working on. You're thinking about the context in which it resides in society around you, which is, it's just it's the big brain moment where you just unlocked the next tier of design, because you're thinking about how it's impacting people and the way that people behave and the way people think. And you're not just making a game for fun or to play, you're making a contribution to society in a weird way.
Yeah. No, and I think that's all very real and very important as we kind of not formalize, the role or the skills that a game designer should have, but actually kind of broaden it in terms of we get this question all the time. I get people so do you need to be good at math? It's no. Well, do you need to be good at programming? No, not really. Do you need to be good at any of these various things that people have this preconceived notion about what a game designer does? And so it's really, I think for me being, fairly old dude, it's really actually, I'm happy to hear this is what I'm trying to say, is that it really gives me hope in that the future generations of game designers are going to do a better job than the past generations, because a lot of us didn't think about all those things you're talking about until way after we got into this. Some of the stuff that you're talking about is I do think about that, but it wasn't until 12 years in the industry that I could actually literally put my mind to think about that thing that you're talking about. And having that grounding and that basis of ludological thought process, I think is really, really important for people to have.
There's some really
Adam has a question here.
I was going to say, Adam has a really interesting question. A game that uses audio instead of visual.
Yes. Adam's a musician. I've long thought about making a game that uses audio instead of visual information, maybe even resource management and Euro stuff with emphasis on theme. At what point is it more video game than board game? Does it matter? Does categorization shape how you design an experience that's accessible to others? That is a deep question.
That end of that question is really deep.
Yeah.
All right. Which part do we want to focus on? The first part or the second part?
I think, Carol, didn't you do the BJam?
Yeah, so I actually did an AR game that was entirely audio. With a group of folks. I think so doing something, and is it safe to assume that there's still are there still, if we're talking about resource management and Euro type stuff with emphasis on theme, I'm just kind of curious a little bit about the presentation of the, how are the resources represented, things like that, because is this still a board? Are there physical components to it at all? In which case, it's a video game and that's okay. If there is a board and there's an audio, supplement to it, then it's a hybrid game, and that's also really awesome. I don't think, I think categorization is going to matter more once you start thinking about distribution. And, exactly. And also, retailer, like, are you going to be selling this to whom and how? Like, it's going to be tough to get a hybrid game like that into mass market, but there are going to be hobby places that are probably going to be really excited and fascinated by that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, Drop Mix did okay for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
That was at like the craziest places.
Yeah, and that was definitely sold like in Toys R Us in Canada. It was sold in the video game department. Even though it had, card sets and booster packs and all those things that are very, very analog. It was definitely a neat idea. And I mean, I still have mine. I still like it. I like playing with it every now and then as an ex-DJ. So it's really quite interesting, Adam. I think there's some neat stuff in terms of that. And I think the answer is, why don't you make it?
Maybe it'll be something.
Just do it. I think it sounds awesome. And I would like to play it.
What was the blindfold game again? Nocturne? The one where there's only the sense of touch.
Oh, yeah. That was Nyctophobia.
Nyctophobia. Sorry, I knew it had something to do with nighttime. It's interesting because when stuff like that comes up, it gets a lot of attention, but there's so few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's scary to experiment.
Yeah, it is. And some of those games that were experimentation, and literally, she made it. The designer of Nyctophobia made it to play with her. I believe her uncle, who was visually impaired. Yeah, I think so.
There, nothing is about what it looks like. It's all about what it feels like and what you're listening for. But
and the other thing is that it wasn't ever expected to be a product, right? It was never expected that this would, kind of be that thing. It was made specifically for this reason, specifically for this person. And it just happened to be that, hey, this is also interesting, or could be interesting to other people to experience.
New experiences are important in entertainment, right? Like, yes, we all know, we've seen this even with like movies and TV shows or even products. There's a line where it's like that little bit too new, right? Where people just aren't ready yet. And that's kind of why even Adam's question about categorizing matters, because if people can't place it somewhere, there's a dissonance there. It's like when someone tells you it's a comedy and you watch something, you're like, yeah, there was like a couple of laughs, but this is not a comedy. Your expectations going into something matter.
Like Bo Burnhamthorpe.
But it matters. Like how you're set up for something very much influences your experience, right? That's just psychology. It's such a, I don't know where I was going, but it's all good.
I gotta say that
I think expectations are really
the best thing in the last 2 months.
Yeah, so I think Bo Burnham's stuff is really interesting. I have a really hard time calling it comedy, and that's on me. That's my fault, right? Because of my expectations of what comedy should be.
I think that it's human, not on you. I think that's a human thing.
I think there's also,
but I think it was brilliant.
Comic relief often gets mixed in with just comic, like being classified as comedy now, rather than understanding it's the breakup of the story in between. We sort of give these way too broad generalizations now about hey, someone laughed once, it's comedy. Like,
it's funny, but it hurts.
Right. In which case,
that's the whole thing with that one. Right?
Yes. So it's interesting, those distinction lines. Because again, if you're set up the wrong way, you're kind of like, what am I watching? What's happening here? I don't like, you know what I mean? We sort of need those guide rails, kind of, but they can be wide.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the most successful projects have that, they have that level of familiarity that people know they think that they know what they're getting in for, but there's something to surprise them and get them excited and feeling like they're
in a good way.
Stretching outside their comfort zone. Exactly. But but the fact that it's framed in such a way that they feel comfortable approaching it in the first place is really important. So that that makes total sense.
we talk about like the dissonance that happens when it's like too much innovation. Because, I often talk to people about, hey, I know that you're saying everything's innovative, but is that really what you want to sell people on? Because
Is that too much sometimes?
It doesn't actually sell if you're talking product. If you're talking the business end of things, there's so many things that are critically acclaimed, but not commercially viable or commercially at all successful. And then there's the opposite, things that you would never think would be successful, but are, because people like comfort in a lot of ways. They like what they like, and they like the same thing with just maybe a little bit different twist here and there, or maybe art that they like even better, or whatever. And I think that's fair, that people can like what they like, they're allowed to. But also that innovation is a great thing. It's just depending on what your end goal is, right? So in this industry, unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, but a lot of people are, I want to get my name on a box, I want it published, I want that. And it's like, okay, then that game might not be the one that you push out as your first game, because it's great, but only X% of the people out there who buy games will actually probably stick with it. Because you see a lot of games that are a flash in the pan, like games that are revolutionary in certain ways, but because they're so different, they don't pick up that massive groundswell from like a player perspective, and then nobody's talking about it 2 months after. So
I think
it's sad.
I think that we see that with the current lawsuit that shall not be named.
Okay.
Between a famous designer and his company, where he's a brilliant designer, and the company just decided, you're making brilliant stuff, but it's just not profitable, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be a very, very interesting outcome for that kind of thing, where it's like, does innovation actually matter?
It depends on what your end goal is, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe it depends on the company's positioning, right? It's
they have an end goal, and he has an end goal. His end goal is innovation, and right?
Yeah.
Right? So it's going to be interesting to see the outcome of that lawsuit.
Yeah, it's funny because it's less of a thing in art film. Like, we all know art house films when we see them, because they are wild and strange and weird and awesome.
Yeah.
But we know that
it's great
only a very small percentage of people are going to shell out, $18 a ticket in Canada. That's how much they cost to go see that thing, that piece of art in a big studio kind of setting. But there's a very select few people who will love it to death and, rally behind it forever, but it's still never going to get a big box office release. So it's an interesting thing that we accept it in some fields. Like, we accept it in music all the time. There's so much experimental music out there. Why do we accept it there, but not in games? And I think
feel
that's
like you guys hit it earlier with the conversation about what art is and what things are allowed to be art. Like, it's interesting because, right now we're still people are allowed to now say, video games and comic books are art, where before people were like, no, they're not. Right. But it's like we slowly allow things to be added to that list. You know what I mean?
And the thing is that when they become that, or when they're graced with that title, we see this immense proliferation of interesting things.
Yeah.
It's not just capes,
but it has to be allowed
tights anymore, right? In comic books, it's so much more. Really talked about. Yeah, we haven't really talked about this, which is Kroma.
Oh.
Are we all together? Are we all lined up? I think we kind of blipped for a second.
Sorry. Yes, we
you were cutting in and out, so
Kroma.
We didn't really hear you. Okay.
I just said we only have 7 minutes left, so we better talk about Kroma. So let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Carol, tell us about Kroma. What is it? How is it played? How did you guys come up with designing that? What made you decide to go with a publisher instead of self-publishing? All the questions. You have 6 minutes. Go.
All the questions, 6 minutes. Kai, you're going to have to help a little bit.
Or as long as you need
I'll do my best.
It's fine. It's fine.
I am going to mute myself.
Okay. Kroma is a 2 to 3 player abstract strategy color blending game where light is a component. So the idea is that there is a triangle board that players are playing on, and that board lights up with LED lights inside of it. And players draw pink, blue, and yellow tiles from a bag one at a time each turn and place it anywhere on the board. But the trick is you can play it over 2 layers and actually blend those tiles together using the light shining through the tiles to blend into green, orange, and purple, which are the target colors of the 2 or 3 players. And those colors are capturing territory on the board and earning them points. And so in 3 player, the player with the most blended colors is the winner. And in 2 player, it's slightly different. It's more head to head. It's the player with the largest connected contiguous shape. So it's more like fortress building and fortress defense. There's a lot more defensive and strategic plays in that version.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love the idea of competitive color making.
It's so cool. And then, like we like to say at the end, it's like, it's not just abstract strategy, it's abstract art, because you've collaborated through competition to make this like really interesting composition. And a lot of times people just feel really bad, putting it away and tearing the pieces off of the board and everything. But again, that was the kind of project that we could only make at a place like NYU, where we had access to a maker space, where we had the opportunity to fail, where we weren't designing for profit, retail viability, right? So we were simply designing around A, what makes good design, and B, what's an opportunity to experiment that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Yes, Heather O'Neill says, in case anyone wants to check it out or back it, perhaps, like Adam did, check it out at kickstarter.com/projects/admagic/Kroma-1. What's the 1 for?
You can also just find it at Kromagame.com. Sorry.
That's easier. There you go.
Kromagame.com. Yeah.
And that'll
forward you right there.
Redirect.
There you go.
Redirect you straight to the Kickstarter.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, something really unique about this is that it is a essentially zero-sum game with perfect information for 3 players.
Right.
We were actually absolutely
talking about that. We were talking about that the other day on Ludology. Eric and I co-host Ludology, and we were talking about different number of player games. And that is one thing that we sort of kind of didn't dance around, but we never really answered the question if that existed. And you're right. It's like super few and far between, if at all. And so now I am super interested. 3-player games are kind of my favorite games for some weird reason. I like that number of players.
Interesting dynamic.
That's why. And I think there's some games that do it really, when a game really does a 3-player game well, it's an awesome experience. And when they don't, it's a miserable experience. So
yeah,
exactly.
That's why I really like 3-player games. Jim Baker's asking, he says it sounds so cool, but would it need a warning for colorblind people?
So the answer is not really. So because everything is like completely perfect information, you're feeling for the piece that you want. And when you pull it out, you can ask any other player what color it is to make your decision. Like, you don't have a set of cards that you're like, oh, shoot, like, I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah.
Right. But also, a couple of the pieces, like, there's enough color differential in the pieces that you can kind of tell shades for almost all colorblind modes. And we've tested with there's a whole spectrum, left and right, blending back and forth. And we've tested with a lot of people. It hasn't ever been a problem, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be. However, if in doubt, you can always ask.
Yeah. Often what we see is players will just, ask whoever they're playing with at the beginning of the game, and like just start out by blending the colors on the board and say, okay, so this is purple. And then they're able to like identify that for the rest of the game generally. So it makes, it makes that process a lot easier. But we do also have ideas in mind in the future if we ever get a chance to do a second printing, and take more time of doing things like etching and stuff so that people can tell more visually the difference between the colors. But that wasn't a part of our timeline and budget this time around, but it's something that I think would be really, really cool to explore. Yeah, because that's always the first question that folks ask is like, if I'm colorblind, can I play? And the answer is probably, but like we're not 100% sure.
Yeah, we would love to make it 100% accessible. That's a dream of ours, and one that we have like worked and grappled with and maybe solved.
Sen, is your internet connection speed enough to be able to put up the visual of the game?
I think so.
I don't want to like lose you somehow, but
I know
because I think a big part is that ability to actually see what's happening.
Yeah, let's do that.
There's a good tonal difference amongst the colors, but yeah, you maybe have to get someone to identify first.
So let's see if I can do that. I'm gonna ask everybody to say a silent prayer for my internet connection.
Because I was gonna say, I don't think we can show anything. Otherwise, I'd love to take that over, but I just don't want to lose.
No, you actually can. You can actually screen share. You should still be able to screen share, Erica. I think so. Yeah.
Oh.
I can also
just pop up. It'll pop up in my staging area.
Because I have the if it doesn't die on me, I have the Kickstarter up. Do you want me to try?
I've got it. Say that silent prayer, everybody.
Oh, I already hit it.
Do it. I'll do it. Oh, you're trying? Yay! It's gonna work. Come on.
I already hit it.
No, it's good. It's good. Keep going. Keep going.
I don't know what's happening. It's like down here. Can you guys?
Okay, so
I don't know. I have two things. Can you see it, or you have to allow it?
I can't see it yet.
Sen, do you have to allow it?
It is. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have to turn off my video. I have to allow it.
Oh no. We've never tried this before.
This is exactly what we said the silent prayer for.
Hold on. I'm going to just like mimic.
Oh, okay. Wait. I think it's coming.
Is it?
I think it's just because internet is so odd with these days with everybody on.
Yeah.
Oh, Sen.
We can talk about so Sen also asked about why we chose to go with a publisher instead of self-publishing. We can talk about that while we're in these tiny boxes, if that's helpful.
Let's do it. Let's do it with these. Here, let's see if I can actually put my face in the column here. There we go.
There we go. So this game is extremely, once you see it, so we were hand making acrylic light boards that Kai had designed and engineered. And it was probably about $100 in just materials, not including labor for each board, and was extremely labor intensive and time consuming. There you can see it.
Yay!
And
also handmade in Brooklyn, which is cool, but not cool enough to like be the selling point.
Yeah. And, you know, we wanted it to be able to reach more people. And so, you know, we had been advised that because the cost of goods was going to be so high that it was going to be really difficult to find a publisher. And so we had kind of, we weren't really holding out hope. We were thinking like, oh, this is just going to be a cool experimental project that we did at school. And then we wound up taking it to a student showcase, and a handful of publishers showed up to it. And that was where we met our publisher, Breaking Games. And they basically made us an offer on the spot for this project because they were so taken by it. And it was kind of a no-brainer, like, you know, having been advised that it was going to be a challenge to find someone who was going to be, you know, knowledgeable enough and capable of producing such a complex, you know, never been seen before kind of project. We were just like, yeah, of course, like we'd love to explore this with you. And so that was 3 years ago that we did that. And it's been a process, but wow, it's so nice knowing that, you know, we don't have to hand make hundreds of these. And, you know, it's going to be professionally manufactured, and it's going to have a battery where, you know, all of ours were kind of haphazardly wired. And yeah, it's gonna have that, you know, nice retail consistency. So that was ultimately why we went with picking a publisher. Also, just imagine, I mean, this is such a large game, especially compared to what I am used to self-publishing. I'd only ever self-published a smallish card game, and warehousing that and, you know, storing those has been a pain. So I can't imagine having to figure out how to mass produce and warehouse a game of this scale. So
and it comes with matching cord, so that's extra awesome.
Yes, that's
get
true.
team cords.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. That is great.
I just want to show everything as I'm going here, so I'm slowing down so you can appreciate.
We sent out a like prototype sample to Shut Up and Sit Down, and all they could say while they were touching it is like, "This feels so good. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when it's real."
Right?
Yeah, and that for me, as like a real tabletop nerd, I just had like sparkles. Out of my face.
I can see them, even though nobody else can see them. I can still see everybody in this feed, so I can see your sparkling right now.
I was sparkling. It was so nice to be like, and then he was like, "But it's also a great game." And I was like, "Oh,
right." It's art. It's a game. It's a product. It's industrial art. It's everything. It's designed so well.
So the things that we hate as board gamers are teaching other people rules, right? Which we have minimized in this game, and then having to then slowly, awkwardly put it away.
Right.
And this game, you don't have to put it away. You can just like leave it and have it be there, not just for the night, but like for weeks.
Because people will just come and play with it and move things around, and or they'll look at it and say that's beautiful. And
exactly.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. So currently you're sitting at about 50,000 Canadian out of about $143,341 Canadian of the goal. So I'm not sure what that translates into American, with 431 backers and 2 weeks to go. So everybody out there in Maple Syrup Land, if you haven't backed yet, check it out. See if it's something that you're interested in. It looks like a beautiful product. If you are into abstract games, this is like perhaps near the pinnacle of abstract games, people.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's beautiful.
Chess.
Yeah, it's
3-player chess.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
Sorry, space chess and 3-player chess.
Yeah.
And
so I think it looks beautiful. And hopefully it'll fund and it'll become a reality for everybody out there in Maple Syrup Land and beyond. So thanks very much for everybody who's come on the show today. Good to see everybody in the chat. Raha, Jim, Adam, Chris. Who else do we have? Heather. And we have more Spencer. Spencer coming in from the ATL. Good to see everybody here. Hopefully we'll be able to see people in the near future on the not only here online, but at actual conventions. That would also be nice, right? So 1 second, let me just I'm in the wrong folder here. Where are we? Oh, there we are. So before we leave, let's just find out where we can reach everybody. Carol is at Carol Mertz on Twitter. Yeah, on the Bird Machine.
On the Bird Machine.
Yes, and Kai is at Kai_Karhu. And you can reach the two of them there. They are wonderful designers, instructors, people who have tons of knowledge about, the industry, game design, and even from an artistic point of view. I mean, you can ask them, "Are games art?" and they will tell you straight to your face.
I also like talking about games, just in general.
There you go.
You want someone to argue about Twilight Imperium with?
You're the person. You're the person to argue about that? Specifically
probably
Twilight.
Probably not, but you can.
There you go. She's totally willing to argue with you about Twilight Imperium. Wonderful. Are there any games that you're that you don't want to argue about?
Go.
Okay. So no go, but yes to Twilight Imperium, because as we all know, the Bird Machine is where arguments happen.
Don't argue with me on the Bird Machine. I will mute you.
Carol will mute you on the other hand, and I am the hander out of hard blocks, so don't argue with me much either. I don't mind actually if you argue with me, but it's really not my thing. If you are on Twitter, you can find Erica at Erica Boujuris. Erica, do you like arguing on Twitter? Oh, Erica, you're. I think you're muted. Are you muted?
Or it was just a really cool trick.
They're throwing their voice.
I don't know what she's doing.
Did you mute Erica?
I did not mute Erica.
No. Okay.
So
I was trying to translate her.
It might have been the screencasting thing messed it up. I don't know. Okay, well, we'll figure it out. Jesse is coming back to the show most likely in January. But if you want to talk to them, they are at TT Void. Actually, the funny thing is, the only show that Jesse came on this year was for one of your ex-professors, because he is a huge fan of Consenticle. So
that is a game that is art.
Right?
That was a game that we waited for while making our pieces, Carol.
Yes.
Oh, hilarious.
I sat there and watched these gorgeous little pieces be cut from acrylic as I was like,
oh yeah.
But I have a project due tomorrow. And I need the machine.
That's funny. Yeah. So when Naomi came on, that was the only show Jesse says, I'm going to break my rule for the year and come on for that one because he wanted to talk about it. They wanted to talk about it so badly. It's
incredible.
Yeah, it is. And Naomi was just a world of knowledge and just broke my mind in so many ways and reformed it for me.
Incredible.
So that was wonderful too. So I invited her, anytime you want to come on and just chat, let's just do that. Cause I had a blast. I could talk to her forever, which is wonderful.
I have so much love for her. So much love.
No doubt, right? Deserves every ounce of it, I'm sure. And for me, if you want to come on the Bird Machine and talk to me, I am at Senfeng Lim on Twitter. You can reach us at Meeple Syrup on Twitter. Please note that those two accounts are both locked currently because of some bad actors in the internet world. But, I don't feel like being, doxed or anything right now. So let's not do that. If you do want to support us at the Meeple Syrup Show, please reach out on patreon.com/Meeple Syrup. There are a bunch of tiers and, maybe over the summer, Erica and you and I and Jess can talk about, how can we make that even better for people? Things that we can do that are different. We'll see. But, it's a good way to help us keep our lights on. And we do have a bunch of funds that we've been saving up over the last year and a half because of COVID that will get put towards conventions and things like that. Not for us to go to conventions. We'll be there anyway. But to do stuff at conventions like live streaming, interviewing people for the audience to see what happens at conventions if you can't get there yourself. And maybe even look at some scholarship type stuff. We don't want the money for ourselves. We want the money to make making games easier for people who are maybe a little bit disadvantaged or marginalized in those areas. So that is what we are doing with the money from the Patreon. Eventually, just hasn't happened because of COVID. So there you go. I'm going to ask Kai first. Kai, what is your final piece of advice?
What, for gaming?
Yeah, for people who are game designers. What kind of advice can you give
designers?
Yeah.
Understand that you are different than digital game players because you are actually learning the human component. You're reading facial expressions and you are interacting with people that are diverse despite, playing online where everyone can be whoever you imagine they are.
Love it. That's awesome. And Carol, what is your final piece of advice for the burgeoning game designers out there?
Oh gosh, there's so much advice, but I think just play test the crap out of your games as early as possible and as much as you can, more than you think that you need to, because every single playtest is going to teach you something about your game, and it's going to teach you something about your players. And the more you can do that, the more you will learn. And also, don't be afraid to throw stuff out that's not working. And always try to make things simpler instead of trying to make things more complicated.
Brilliant. All of that is good stuff. Oh, right. Oh, yes. So Rat Queens, thank you, Erica. Rat Queens is launching next week. That is a game that Erica and I co-designed, and Jesse is the developer on. It will be published by Deepwater Games, so Nolan and Al and Jacob and all of them, with the creative writing from Curtis Weeb, who is the original comic creator. He didn't write for the game, but that's what I'm saying is he's the one who created this world that we're making it in. Rock Upchurch was the original artist. We're having other art done and other things done, so it's going to be really cool. If you want to be one of the what do they call themselves? The battingliest. I can't say it. Badass. They're badass. That's all I'm gonna say.
I think we can hear Erica now. I heard that cackle. Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay, so it's something
like we've got a ghost.
No, it was something to do with the screen share. That's why I was writing to you guys.
Yeah, no, it was effective. I liked it. Keep doing that. No, I also like hearing your voice, but keep poking me with those types of messages. That was awesome.
Yeah, because so that's next. I think it's Tuesday. So
yeah, it's coming up real quick.
Curtis, didn't make the game, but he liked it. He likes it. He's played it.
He likes it a lot. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when we were talking about is it art or is it a product, and Erica and I do a lot of work in IP, so we're constantly making games for other people's brainchild, other people's art, right? So is this transformative? Is it art? Is it still art? I don't know. These are questions we have to ask because we're not necessarily the directors of that entire vision. We're looking at somebody else's vision and translating it down. Yeah, we're translating it into a tabletop form. But is that art? It's an art form. It's a type of art to do that. Is the product that we end up with art? Those are good questions. I don't know. Before we go, because this is our last show for the season, everybody. We'll be back in September. Just Erica and myself, and then Jesse will come join us when they get back to Ontario in the January, February months. And Jim asks if we could maybe organize some board game jams in Canada.
We did that at Fan Expo 1 year, but the problem is that if it doesn't get well advertised, people don't know it's happening.
Yeah, and the other thing about FanX is that there will be no more board game track at FanX.
No, they
for
don't
the foreseeable future.
I was gonna say they don't know what to do with us anyway.
But maybe we can do something. Maybe we can figure out some way to do something. Maybe at like a Proto TO or at maybe at Breakout Con. Yeah, so there's stuff. We can definitely do stuff. Jesse and I have done stuff. Jay and I have done stuff. Eric and I have done stuff with board game jams. They're just, we need to do, I think, a better job of advertising them.
Yeah, it's as long as it's an expectation and that's happening from the minute the event has been announced. Like it is one of the, not a tack on, because I'm sorry to say, but a lot of board game jams are just like, hey, I got product. Let's like a week before, let's throw something together.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if it's organized with the event.
Yeah. And then Adam Young is saying that the streams from Breakout a couple years ago were really nice when they couldn't make it. And that's exactly what we're there for. That's what we want to make sure that, the design community especially is kind of tied into each other, especially the Canadian side. Lots of love for all of you in America. We love you. It's fine. But there's not a lot of focus on
people are afraid of us.
You say nice things. There's always a big but.
Yeah.
But
well, so really it's not the people that we're afraid of. It's other things about America that we're afraid of. Some of them may be people. It's not you people. It's other people.
You guys.
Nah.
No, I'm afraid of America.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah, it is. So yes, we will be back in September with a lineup of guests. We already have a couple people we're thinking of talking to in terms of, fulfillment and distribution. We want some people to talk about that because that's actually one of the biggest problems in the industry right now.
It's interesting to see what kind of happened over the next couple of
yeah, we
months.
want to see what happens over the 2 months. And then if you have any other comments or concerns or people that you want us to talk to, get on to the Maple Syrup Shop Talk page on Facebook and let us know. Who do you want to talk to? I think we did a list last semester. I think of as a teacher in the semesters.
Yeah.
I know. Last season at the beginning, and we actually did a pretty good job on that list.
We got
So
most of them.
I don't know if we got most of them. It was a pretty big list, but let's see if there's new people that you want to talk to. And remember, here at the Maple Syrup Show, we have a mandated, stated mission of lifting up voices of marginalized people. So we probably won't get Richard Garfield or Reiner Knizia or any of the big name people. Not that we can't, but because they already
Everybody
got
else
lots of
is
people
already,
talking about them.
everyone else is talking to them already. What do you want to hear it again? No.
You don't need to hear that again. So yeah, if you have other people that you're going, hey, I've heard about this really cool game. Nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever talks about the designer, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Concepts, these types of
Y'all
jobs.
are bigger than you might think you are. I don't know, like 3 days ago, I was looking, I need a new tattoo, and I've always wanted a meeple. And I Googled, well, I DuckDuckGo'd meeple, and I would say like really, really high up, it started all being maple syrup connections.
Interesting.
And
there you go.
And I was like, oh, I don't know. I think that's branded. Like,
well, there are a couple other people.
I need to put a trademark on.
We'll see about that. We're not going to fight anybody for the name, but definitely we're the first. Anyway, so thank you very much, Kai. Thank you so much, Carol, for coming on the show. We look forward to having this product on our tables, and we look forward to actually like getting to meet you in person at some convention in the near future, hopefully sooner than later. It won't be till 2022 for me. And
Unless
for Erica,
I'm going to PAX you.
I was thinking about it just because
it's in December, so I feel like it's safe to be far
it's
away.
close, but also because our role playing game will be debuting for sale then, hopefully.
Nice.
And Banana just told me that the demo place at PAX U is not connected to the sales floor at PAX U, so she can't do both, is what she's trying to tell me.
Oh, got you. So one of you will work one side, one of you will work the other side.
That's what it would have to be, but I don't even know if I'm going to go or can go, really. So we'll see. I get my second shot on Monday, so you know, if I feel better about it by December, maybe. But I really don't have any plans to.
Also, happy delayed Canada Day.
Yeah.
Nobody did a super big celebration this year just because everything that's going on, but I think people did a muted, like, you know what, still happy I live here.
So I'm very happy about Canada. I'm very proud about a lot of stuff that happens in Canada. I'm also very disappointed in things that happen in Canada, and I think that's okay, and I think that's the way life kind of has to be. Like, if you're ever so complacent that you're there's something that isn't right, there's something wrong, right? Things can always improve, is what I'm trying to say.
As an American.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I mean, we often get lauded as, America's better cousin or whatever, but we've got lots of stuff that we need to deal with and problems that we need to deal with, particularly right now with the indigenous communities that, we share this land with. And
it's a big conversation.
Yeah, it's a really big conversation that needs to happen, desperately needs to happen. And so there's some real
beside Canada Day this year because of it. So
literal huge problems that are being swept under the rug for lots and lots of reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, and not of the least of which is that a lot of our country is actually on unceded territory. So we don't actually own the land, right? So it's interesting. It's very interesting compared to America.
Ever?
No, and that's the thing, right?
Well, same with America, right?
Yeah.
We ever? So
yeah.
Anyway, not to get too political.
No, that's okay. We're all right with that. So everybody out there in Maple Syrup Land, we will see you in 2 months on the show. I'll be doing another Friday night forum next week, the last one, I think, anyways, for the summer. I do need some time to actually finish a bunch of designs and do some new stuff. So I might close that down for the summer as well, but then bring it back in the fall. And it will be with Alex Bouy from, I think she's in Western Canada. So Edmonton or I think she's in Calgary. And we're going to talk about bringing Chinese mythology into role-playing games. And so that'll be pretty cool. It's part of my focus on the tabletop mentorship program and the idea of mentorship in general. So she's a member of that and participating in that. So we're going to talk about, all that kind of stuff. And also Chinese mythology, which I'm, really stoked to talk about. And then other than that, Erica, anything else? No? Yes?
I think that's it. Yeah, our plan is to regroup a little bit. We could probably get a few people arranged when we get to gathering for interviews and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then we'll put out a poll soon for everybody to say hey, who would you like to see?
Yeah, and also just remember, if you're watching and there are people who would be awesome to talk to, but aren't necessarily in our time zones, because this is the easiest time zone for us to manage West and East Coast of North America, but definitely not great for the Brits out there or the Germans.
Yeah,
the Australians love it because it's the morning for them.
Yes, that works out very well.
But we had last week, I had somebody from Spain, and Paco was like, "It's 3 a.m. where I am." It's like, oh, sorry.
That's commitment. See,
I forgot.
Commitment.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of Hawaiian designers on the show.
No, but we could. I would love to. I would love to see that.
Yeah, if you're a Hawaiian designer, we want to talk to you. Because that would be awesome. Because if you don't know, I'm very interested in getting into more and more markets and understanding exactly what goes on there, because I don't think we hear enough.
Right. And so what I was saying is that if they're in different time zones, we can do special things. Like we can pre-record an interview or something like that. So don't worry about time zones. Just let us know who you want to talk to, who you think would be great on the show, who may have a voice that needs uplifting, and we will work out the rest of it. All right. On that note, we'll say goodbye to everybody. Good night. We'll catch you later in I guess we'll sing a Beach Boys song. Is it a Beach Boys song? See you in September?
No.
See you in September.
No, I don't think that's
it could be.
I will see you when the summer's through. Really? Come on.
I don't think that's Beach Boys, though.
I'm disappointed in the younger generation.
No, but seriously, I have Beach Boy albums upstairs. I don't think that's a Beach Boys song. I think
Same.
it's totally wrong.
It might not be. We'll go find out. If anybody knows, let us know. And over the summer, we will 100% be on the Maple Syrup Shop Talk page all the time. So just contact us there if you need us.
And
all right?
You can still catch us on Ludology throughout the summer as well.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
If you're missing Sen and I, our lovely, lovely voices.
Our mellifluous tones.
You
also get to talk to Gil Hova and Scott Rogers, who are very cool. So
yeah,
that's very fun. Oh, the next one we're doing is actually pretty fun. It'll be the inventor of the combat wheelchair.
Yes.
For Dungeons and Dragons. So that's going to be a fun one. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you later. It was very nice to see you this term. Sorry, see, I did it again.
It's
semester.
Summer.
Wait a minute. This season, and we'll see you in September. Good night. So long.
Bye, guys.